question is as follows. How likely do you think it is that there will be further riots in English cities in the next year? Whilst about almost a third of you think that it's likely, the vast, getting a half who are saying it's not very likely. So the balance of opinion pretty firmly in the room is that it's not very likely. Well, I think fair to say that you and the public are not quite at one here. The public is braced for more riots. Nearly 6 in 10 think that it's at least fairly likely, with nearly 1 in 5 thinking it's very likely.
It's not like it's anonymous economic forces that are robbing people of these opportunities. They're actually, policy decisions that could be made differently. A lot of these political elites and, banking executives actually can get away with the same kind of looting, just in a different context.
Young people are not as deprived as they have been in the past.
Could we not build some of these ETS courses into school programmes and get people having a sense of resilience and to think about costs, benefit, consequences at a very young age?
The cultural regulation of communities, of adults being able to say to children, even if they're not their own children, don't go out, don't do that. That's sort of holding back and retreating into individual units. And actually you saw a challenge to that from those communities that did come out, the adult males who came out and said we're going to protect our shops and businesses.
My question is really, is a punitive regime the best way to re-engage people back into communities, be it take away their housing or give them a year in prison, particularly when some of the people in prison for a year that I spoke to had skills that they could give back to the community, plumbing, etc., that could be put into a restorative justice framework.
A group of community workers said to the senior police officer who was in charge of policing the potential riots that they wanted some time to go out and try to persuade people not to get involved. And he gave them an hour. And the team of youth workers went out and started talking to lots of young people. Now, I don't know whether that was the sole reason, probably not, but certainly it had an impact. And we've known from our research that similar activity had an impact in Liverpool, where there were riots, but perhaps not quite as bad as other cities where there were riots, and parts of London where there were no riots. Similar activity was happening.
I think actually the discussion so far has focused very heavily on deterrence, parenting, authority, kind of firefighting type measures that don't really get at the underlying factors that we've all made reference to and acknowledged that they're important, but haven't really discussed in anywhere near enough detail yet, or in terms of coming to any conclusions about what we ought to do about them. And employment's a major part of that, I think. Also, social mobility as well, and inequality.
Would you be happier if there was a smaller gap in income, but everyone was a bit poorer?
Yes, I mean, I don't think that's the point. I think the point Matt's rightly making, and this came out from our research, is that perceived injustice, and it can take many forms, was for some people, I think, a significant driver.
To say that their poverty was in some way, their sense of the justification for it is worrying. I find that worrying.
We seem to have two different systems of justice for people with and without influence.